What's on your radar, Alyssa?
Over the past few days, we've discussed Afghanistan quite a bit on this show. Yesterday, we broke down some of the history that led us to this horrific moment. Kim walked us through much of what the U.S. government got wrong and what we could reconsider for future policymaking. But the U.S. has some immediate questions to answer, and the world is waiting. Today, following President Biden's late, lackluster address to the nation yesterday, I wanted to break down the 8 biggest mistruths of President Biden's defense of his indefensible policy. Myth number 1. The president was not willing to enter a third decade of conflict and surge in thousands of more troops to fight in a civil war that Afghanistan wouldn't fight for themselves. Fact check. Because of Biden's lack of prior planning, Biden in fact just deployed 5,000 additional troops into Afghanistan, twice the number of forces present in the country when he entered office. There is no announced date yet for their departure. Like the infamous Nancy Pelosiism that you have to pass the bill to know what is in it, it seems you have to surge more troops to Afghanistan to pull them out. Now, Biden claim number 2, it's clear from the past few weeks that it would have been necessary for more troops to stay for an indefinite amount of time. However, in fact, peace in Afghanistan has largely held over the past 8 months with just 2,500 troops, as well as ISR and flyover capabilities by the U.S. Air Force. Now, the third claim that President Biden made yesterday is that the administration knew that there was a distinct possibility that Kabul would fall to the Taliban. However, fact check, State Department spokesperson Ned Price stated just days ago that our embassy in Kabul was not closing and would remain open, just days before Kabul was stormed and the embassy fell. Further, the Biden administration was clearly unaware Kabul could fall within days of withdrawal. This is evidenced by the fact that no effort was made to evacuate U.S. personnel before Kabul fell. Claim number 4. The administration planned for every possibility. We had contingency plans in place for any eventuality, including a quick fall of Kabul. That's why we had troops pre-positioned in the region to deploy as we have done. This might be the most stunning mistruth from President Biden. How was the U.S. prepared for the fall of Bagram? Why was no effort made to evacuate or destroy weapons that would fall into the hands of the Taliban? Further, why were diplomats air evac'd to a commercial airport if there were plans for everything? Many are still waiting at the airport for an exit. And of course, the U.S. always has over-the-horizon military options, which is a fancy way of saying U.S. troops ready to deploy on a moment's notice within the Middle East from positions in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar. This isn't planning. It was an emergency response to a lack of planning. The 5th claim President Biden made is that indefinite war was and is unacceptable to the president. This is not so much a fact check as simply saying, mark my words, the additional 5,000 forces that he deployed to Afghanistan will remain in country for quite some time. Charge number 6. The administration has deployed 5,000 U.S. military to Afghanistan to secure the airport and ensure the evacuation flights, commercial and charter flights, can safely depart. Again, you have to surge troops to withdraw them. Biden claim number 7. Many have asked why we did not evacuate more Afghanistan civilians sooner. Part of the answer is that many did not want to leave earlier. Many Afghans to whom we gave visas to come to the U.S. chose to stay in the country, still hopeful. Listen, this may be true, but I highly doubt it. I worked on getting Afghan interpreters' visas out of the country more than 6 years ago when I was working on Capitol Hill. This is not a new issue. Afghanis have been desperate to leave the country for decades, and is evidenced by the horrific footage that we saw of Afghan citizens trying to cling to aircraft and falling to their deaths to escape. I call bull on this. Now, most are desperate to get out, and my guess is any that declined to do so was because they weren't ensuring their families could come with them. Now, claim number 5 from President Biden, and perhaps the most egregious, will hold the Taliban accountable to not allowing Al-Qaeda a safe haven that could threaten the homeland. Respectfully, the Biden administration didn't hold the Taliban accountable when they took over the airbase in Bagram. They didn't hold them accountable when they nearly stormed the U.S. embassy and we had to air evac our diplomats. They didn't hold them accountable for its days-long violent overthrow of the country, ousting the democratically elected president, Ashraf Ghani. Your words mean nothing. The Taliban and the world know that. Thank you, President Biden, for finally speaking to the nation, but I'm afraid it's too late. And Kim, I want to turn to you because you've had a lot of commentary around this and I think made some very good points. What did you make of President Biden's remarks yesterday? Did he miss the mark? Did that offer any kind of a semblance of explanation for why we're in this debacle?
I mean, he tried, right? I mean, he definitely got up there and tried, and he absolutely needed to address the nation. So, I mean, I expected him to say much of what you pointed out, which is a lot of sort of, well, there was this and there was this, a lot of excuses. But I think you point out some really good points. I would like to know what we are going to be doing with those excess troops. I thought, though, that he'd deployed 5,000 and then an additional 1,000. Do you know?
We are actually, yes, that's correct. We're now up to 6,000.
So it's like, well, and we had 2,500 that we got out of there. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I mean, in some ways, people can't have it both ways. People can't say that they're, infuriated at what happened because the Taliban stormed in as the U.S. Troops were withdrawn, but then be skeptical about bringing troops back in. If you draw the troops out, the consequences are going to be that the Taliban comes in and fills that vacuum. If you want more of an orderly exit, you could bring in troops. And now that the Taliban is effectively in control of the country, and nobody can lie about it, nobody can cover their eyes and pretend that it's not happening. There's going to be conversations back and forth between the United States and the Taliban, and that will allow for a more orderly transition. But it won't do so if they don't kind of open up the asylum process in a serious way. Alyssa makes a really good point that we are incredibly stingy about who we let into the country. We might give a visa to a person, but then they're like, well, wait a minute, what about my wife and my kids? They can't come either. That's crazy. And so we got to do something about that. But Kim, I'm looking forward to what's on your radar next.